Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Easter Pod. I'm your host, Corey Easterday, and on this episode, we are chatting with the one and only Skylar Schock. Skylar and I covered so much in this conversation. Skylar, if you're not familiar, is a stand-up comedian, actor, speaker, writer, producer, all the things. Skylar, similar to my previous episode with my good friend Craig Collin, she is another fellow stand-up comic friend that I've made through this stand-up comedy journey I've embarked on the last couple years. And it was really great to be able to sit down, have a more extended conversation. Sometimes in the stand-up comedy world, you're just kind of seeing people in passing. We're all working on our material, doing shows, going to mics, things of that nature. So having the opportunity to sit down and really unpack all the cool things that Skylar has created and is involved in and is producing really was an honor. Really enjoyed our conversation. I know you will as well. And as always, of course, the Easter Pod is striving to bring you these stories of rad humans like Skylar that inspire you to engage the world with creativity and hope. This conversation very much does that. It's when you have a podcast and we're almost 40 episodes in, you find yourself, sometimes you have to make sure you're not just repeating the same kind of phrases over and over. Like, for example, if you are an avid listener, you'll catch me at the end of each episode. Whenever I have the last topic for a guest, I'll say something like, I would be remiss if we didn't cover that. I do it every time. It bugs me. Maybe no one else has noticed it, but this is kind of similar where, I always want to emphasize how much the guests I have on are really inspiring and creative people. It's always very intentional, the guests I try to have on the show and bring to you. And one of the things I always catch myself saying is, even sometimes during the conversation, I'm going to go back and, re-listen to this episode. There's so many great pieces of wisdom and pieces of advice and things I'm taking away from it that sometimes don't always register in the moment. So you go back and listen to it. So I'm going to say it again. This conversation with Skylar, we talked for over an hour. So I'm going to try to shorten this intro up. I've done a terrible job at that so far, but we did cover so many amazing pieces of advice and perspective on life and a lot of great in-depth things that I'm excited to go back and listen to myself. So I know you'll enjoy it. Similarly, definitely check out my last episode with my friend Craig Collin. Like I said, also fellow stand-up comedian, great human. Very similar, covered a lot of great things. Please check that episode out. Check out all the past episodes. A lot of great guests on the show. I've been very honored to have on over the years. And if you dig the show, you can follow us on social media at the Easter Pod. Follow me on social media at the Easter Dude. Subscribe on your podcast platform of choice so you don't miss any of the great upcoming episodes we have headed your way. If you feel so inclined, leave a rating, review, share with friends. All the things means a lot, helps the show out a lot. And before we dive in, special thanks to Easterday Creative for joining forces with the Easter Pod to bring you these stories of rad humans, and to my friends at Token for helping to produce this episode. And of course, be sure to follow Skylar on social media at sshocking on Instagram. Check out her website, skylarschock.com, to see her portfolio of all the cool things she's done and acted in and been involved with over the years, ways to connect, so much more. And without further ado, my conversation with Skylar Schock. Such an honor, cannot overstate it enough, to have today's guest joining me on the Easter Pod. We met originally through the stand-up comedy world, where she not only performs regularly, but produces so many cool and unique shows. And if I can gas her up before we even get into it, is absolutely hilarious, super talented comic. Very excited to talk about comedy with her. And she's one of those folks that I have the honor of speaking with on the podcast, who it seems does an endless amount of awesome and inspiring creative projects, a self-described multi-hyphenate, as it were, which I absolutely love. And I also did the thing where we have a great conversation for like 20 minutes before we actually record it. So what you will hear now is a continuation of that, and very much looking forward to it. She's a stand-up comedian, actor, speaker, writer, producer, on and on, so much more. Skylar Schock, welcome to the Easter Pod. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm so good, Corey. Thank you for having me. And I really appreciate you saying all that too. And I appreciate that you are also a multi-hyphenate, like we were talking about earlier.
Yes, which if I may borrow that.
Please, I hope everyone uses it. Because I think it's, it's one thing to be a one multi-hyphenate, but having many, it is a privilege that we also means that we're very busy all the time.
Yes, that may be the downside of it, but it is a privilege. And it's like one of those infinity math equations, like a multi-hyphenate. You're just endless hyphenates.
Correct. You can have as many as you want.
Yeah, but this is only like our third or fourth time like interacting in person even. And most of the other times I've gotten to see you perform stand-up several times. I know that. Does gas you up have a negative connotation? Is that a good thing to say? I'm not.
I couldn't say it means anything bad other than gas can have multiple meanings, of
That's
which,
true.
IBS, it's possible.
I didn't know if it gas you up was like you're being fake with someone, or you're like,
oh, I don't know. Yeah, like I don't know. Gas you up though feels like it's like a revving it up. Yeah,
that's how I perceive it. Yeah, that's how I perceive it. That's what it's meant to be. But no, I mean, I've only seen you perform a few times, but we have a lot of mutual friends in the comedy world, and you do a lot of really cool shows. And I've always really enjoyed your work, enjoyed your comedy. I think you are super talented, so it is really an honor to have you as a guest on the show. And it's crazy how comedy can evolve, like that journey over time, as we were talking about off air. We have so many things to cover, and we're gonna cover them all, and definitely dig into like more of the background of your process,
Sure.
A lot of the
Yeah.
why, like we were talking about. But just talk about comedy, focus in on that for a minute, since that's how we originally got connected, like how you got started in stand-up comedy and just like some of the basic context that I'm not aware of how you even became a comedian.
Yeah. Well, first of all, also, I love that you, I really do think that you have such a great knack for understanding and appreciating artists of all capacities. And so I love that stand-up happens to be the one that we met with, but then turns out we have a lot of other things in common too. So for me, stand-up, I laugh because I was definitely the kid who, growing up, I thought I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I went to school for marketing, and I started in a corporate kind of career path before going like, this is not right. I don't want to be doing this, and I didn't know what it was that I was supposed to be doing. And eventually I became an actor, and I went to grad school for acting, and I thought I was going to be one of those actors that does like independent film that like changes lives. I was like, I'm going to do Winter's Bone type of stuff. And that's how I saw myself. And then I started getting cast in kind of comedic roles or doing things comedically. And I started to realize how much, first of all, I loved comedy, because to me, comedy became this sort of art form that connects people. So like drama's great, right? Like drama's amazing. But comedy, if everybody in the room laughs at something, all of a sudden you know that you have found something in common with people. And comedy can do that. Like drama, you might not know if the people next to you are taking it the same way. And so I kind of loved that idea that, actually bringing people closer together comes when they laugh together. And at the same time, I was in grad school, we had to do a stand-up comedy class as part of our MFA. And I was like, okay, I kind of took it seriously because I'm a good student, capital G, capital S. And I decided that I was going to, for our final, we were going to have to do our final on the Strip in Vegas. And so I was like, I'm going to go to some open mics before the final, just so that's not my first time on stage. And I was the most nervous I've ever been to do stand-ups. Like, I'm not somebody who gets nervous doing public speaking or doing a play. Like, I'll get nervous. I'm like, did I set the props in the right place? But I don't get like stage fright. And I was terrified for stand-up. And I think something that I've learned is that, like, if you don't constantly put yourself in situations where you have to be uncomfortable, you I mean, I just think you learn so much about yourself in those moments. Like those are really when you actually kind of break that barrier to vulnerability, is when you are uncomfortable. And so I was so nervous to do stand-up, and then I did my set, and I was like, oh, I wrote those jokes. That was my point of view. That was my contribution to the world, and people responded. And there was like this direct relationship with the audience that you don't get in film, and you kind of get in theater sometimes, but it was really unique to stand-up. And the more I've been in it and the more I enjoy writing, those moments have really kept me in it.
That's something so 4 years stand-up almost?
I think so, yeah, 4.
For you?
Sounds
Yeah.
about right.
I'm a little over a year and a half in at the time of this recording. And you just point out something I think that I intuitively like gravitate to about comedy, because of like most of my experience is like in nonprofit world, or like running a business, or the podcast, or just doing things where the whole goal is to connect with people and build community and do all of that. And that's not something I've really taken the time to think about with stand-up, but you described it so beautifully of how it connects people in real time in the audience. Undeniably
so, right? Like I think I remember a teacher I had at UCLA saying, comedy and horror are the only 2 genres where a celebrity doesn't matter. Because if you laugh, you laugh. And if you're scared, you're scared, right? Like it doesn't matter if it's an A-lister or the most famous comedian in the world. It matters if it made you laugh. And that's tangible. Like that thing is real. And so you just know, it's like, oh, that expression, that thing, that way I decided to make it happen, other people have either been there, they've seen it, they've experienced it, and then I get to be, creating that. And then the person next to them felt that way and they laughed too. And that's such a unique feeling, is like creating, getting a room of people together, Yeah,
and that's a great way to describe it too, of the real-time nature of it, because with acting, of which you have a lot of cool projects and things you've been a part of on all sides of it in regards to that, or it's like podcasting or any of these things, you're not getting as much of the like real-time interaction or feedback. And that can be like the scary thing about comedy for myself. Totally. I would want to hear about your influences and stuff in comedy, but I imagine there would be like a decent amount of overlap in terms of like comedic influences and what made you like want to get into it and enjoy it. But for me, I spent like 34 years of my life telling myself or having other people say it, or like, oh, one day it'd be cool to try stand up. But that's for them. That's for other people.
Somebody else is doing it.
Brave people, or you have to write or whatever excuses you come up with. But going through that process of like, you try, you fail, you refine, like we were talking about off air, it's such a living, breathing, organic, creative process. And then you take the audience element of it. And I can't think of many things in my life right now that from start to finish in the process, the writing, the whatever I'm doing behind the scenes, but then communing with an audience, like it's very alive. It's like totally every show.
And it's different even than the social media piece, right? So if you put a clip on social media, people they laugh or they'll comment, but you actually don't know if it, you don't really get the same experience of it as if you had told the joke to someone in person, right? There's a reason comedians, we test our jokes on our friends, our family before we go do it. But it's fascinating too, because you were talking about this idea of, you try something, you write it, and you fail, and then you rework it. I think in our society today too, we're so afraid of failure. Like everyone thinks that the finished product, the thing that goes on social media, the final thing is that you just step into it, or that it just happens. And comedians, we know that that's impossible. Like you can write a joke and it'll get a laugh the first time if you kind of understand structure, you know what you're doing. But to really have gotten to that place, usually there's bumps in the road. There's, okay, that didn't get a laugh, or maybe if I change this. And so we're real time, failing and repeating and getting up there and working that muscle, Yeah.
And I think too, going back to the communal piece and having an audience and the organic nature of it, why did that resonate with somebody, or what will make it resonate with somebody? What is it? One of the things I've been thinking about a lot more of coming more out of that season of just proving it that I can actually do it, to being able to play with the art form a little more. It's what is your voice? What do you want to say?
Exactly.
What's going to connect with people? And I just had a episode before yours, our mutual friend Craig Collin on, who also does comedy. and just that idea of like, he's a 6-time cancer survivor, and he's weaving elements of like crazy stuff in his life, like into comedy, and finding that balance. And I love what you said about comedy and horror, because I'm a big horror fan.
Are you?
And a big comedy fan.
There you go.
And I think it's because there's like so much universal resonance, and being able, like yourself that's been doing it for 4 years, to just, I'd love to hear more about your process in general, but just be able to say like, oh, what actually connects with people, and like, how do I do more of that,
Totally. And I think that's a big through line in all the stuff that I do, is that it's really ultimately not about me wanting to say something so much as it's about me wanting to see if other people agree or relate or understand or feel like, yeah, that is part of my experience. And I think too, like what you were saying, there's a quote that I love that's like, with art, specifically performance art and film and TV and stuff, the more specific you are, the more universal it becomes. And I just think that is so true, especially with comedy, where it's like, the generic whatever joke might get a laugh, but it's not your voice. Like, that's not you. And the more you become, then the more it's yours,
Oh, could not agree more. I think I've actually quoted, I don't remember where it came from. It's one of those quotes just out in the ether, but I've used it a lot on this. Whoa, careful with the mic there, buddy.
So excited. We're throwing the mic.
Yeah. What a great conversation. Mic's flying everywhere. But that quote of, the specific and the, like, how it can be universal, the more like you dive into it, has been so resonant with me from, like, I started out as like a musician, and that was like my primary creative expression was I'm in a band, we're writing songs, like how, and I listened back to some of the songs we wrote, and how in trying to be so universal or broad with them, some of them come off to me very bland.
Mm-hmm.
And that was high school. And it's why I'm grateful in part that comedy came into my life when it did in my 30s as an adult, because I feel like I have such a long way to go, but I feel like I know so much more about who I am, what resonates with me, why, like all those kind of questions, that it makes it a little bit easier to dive into that process. But tell me about your process with like writing, and because I've the few times I've seen you perform, and we were talking about this a little bit offline, like I think it's so cool how you can, and our friends that do comedy or whatever, you can hear a joke like maybe trying out for the first time, but to see it evolve over time, become something like take shape in a different way. Like, you have writer in your plethora of multi-hyphenates. Had you done a lot of writing before comedy? Has comedy been like where you're writing a lot? Like, what's your process to taking like, here's this idea I have, to like, now it's resonating with the whole audience?
Right. I would say my first exposure to comedy writing has been screenwriting, and I write comedic film, screenplay type stuff. And then that sort of translated, I think, into stand-up writing. Like, I learned the craft of how to write jokes, like all the joke structures and laugh triggers and all those things. So my process feels like a mix of me having to decide, first of all, I'm like, is this joke funny, or is this situational funny? It could end up in a script. Is this more of just a character doing something silly? And then if I think it has, potential to be a joke, I'll usually go through a process of like, something is funny. Something happens that's funny. I have a note on my phone that's just, as I'm sure all comedians do, it's just like funny thing that I want to explore eventually. Like the other day, my boyfriend was playing video games, like the college football, NCAA, whatever, and he was talking to the team out loud. And I was like, okay, there's something in, I don't know, comparing the way he talks to his fake football team and me talking to somebody, so I don't know what the joke is yet. I have no idea, but I know that there's something there that I want to explore. So then I'll usually just like write it out as like a paragraph, and then just try to find opportunities to like throw a joke in there, and then test it, record it, listen back, and just kind of, take feedback from comedians who I trust, who are listening, and kind of evolve it from there. Yeah.
Yeah, which I relate more than I care to admit to the, having strong emotions about
while playing video games.
Your video games or your...
See, good. Okay, then I know that there's probably, once I figure out what the reverse of that is, like what is the female or my equivalent of doing that thing, then I'll know how to, that there could probably be something there.
I'm definitely in your audience for that joke, whatever it ends up being.
Perfect.
For sure. But no, that was one of the most transformational, because our mutual friend Jason Allen King teaches a comedy class, and I've had him on the podcast, and I credit him, all with so much of why I'm even doing comedy or involved in it, because he's such a great teacher.
He's the best.
Very empowering, very talented and gifted. But that was one of the biggest things I got out of that class, just the practice of actually writing it down.
Yeah.
Taking the idea, capturing it so that you can mold it later.
Exactly.
Because we all have so many things that happen on a daily basis where you're like, being a human and life is inherently ridiculous. So just having a little net for like, maybe I can use that.
Totally. And I think sometimes I find like, sometimes it'll just be a funny thought that I have throughout the day that I'm like, does this work as a joke or is this something, a social media video or what is it? And sometimes it's just kind of playing with that concept. Like I have this joke where I'm recently like, I looked at old pictures of myself and I was like, wow, the main thing I think when I look back at old pictures of me is whatever happened to that shirt, and I'm like, so is that just a joke on its own? Should I turn that into a video for social media? Or is that just like something I have a character say in a screenplay? Like, I don't know, and it's just kind of like letting the joke find its home.
And that can be the cool thing about having the multi-hyphenate is, first of all, you mentioned earlier, like seeing the through lines through lots of things, like whether it's storytelling or community or connection or whatever, or, the audience piece of it. But also now you can say, what is the home for this thing?
Where does this belong? Yeah.
It belongs somewhere, but.
Yeah, exactly.
And before we get too far in, I'm on your website, which we'll be sure to plug at the end, but you recently moved to Charlotte, right? Like in the last year?
Yeah,
now?
not that long ago. Yeah.
Was it about the time that we had met at
I think so. That would have been,
2024?
That sounds correct. Yeah. I think it was end of 2023 when I first got out here.
What brought you to Charlotte?
My boyfriend. I moved for love. No, but at the time I was in Las Vegas and he had been living out here. He's in NASCAR. And so that industry is so central to Charlotte area, and performing and acting and whatnot, I can be way more mobile. And so I got an agent out of Atlanta and I've just been working out of here.
So you were, again, I'm getting some of this from your, it's like the fun part of like knowing somebody, but still getting to know them in real time on the podcast. Yeah. So you were, you're California native.
I am. I proudly and strongly consider myself a California girl. Yes.
I'm here for it. Love California. Been many times all over. Great place. And then how long were you in Vegas? When did you end up there?
For 3 years for grad school. Yeah. So 2020 pandemic. And we talked about this kind of at the beginning of the conversation where I talked about wanting to become an actor. And that really was the first, for me, I was living in the Bay Area, working in marketing, and I decided I wanted to be an actor. I signed up for this class and I fell in love, and I really felt like this was the thing I was supposed to be doing. And I have a whole list of stuff I would tell people who, a lot of my friends and people that I've known who are like, how did you decide to make that switch from corporate into creative? And there's we could talk about that. But anyway, I moved to Los Angeles to pursue acting. I loved it there. And then I decided, I was like, okay, I'm still working in marketing part-time and I want to give myself an excuse to fully cut off from that life. And so I said, I'm still too anxious to just quit. And so I said, grad school. Grad school will be the thing that you do to force yourself. And so I had ended up auditioning for a bunch of grad school programs in January of 2020. And I got accepted to a few awesome programs, and UNLV was just the right fit for me because it was a full tuition paid program. They cover your tuition, you get paid while you're there, which during the pandemic was this is a no-brainer. So moved to Vegas and started my MFA, and that's also, like I said earlier, where I started doing stand-up.
Do you like Vegas? Do you enjoy Vegas?
It's such a loaded question.
It is a loaded question.
I think Vegas, everything is very proximal. This was going to make me sound like an elitist, so maybe we'll cut this. But I think coming from California, it's hard to love anywhere else. That sounds wild, but I lived in the Bay Area. I went to undergrad at UC San Diego, and then I lived in Los Angeles. So I'm truly lived in all of California and just had the best access to everything, from hiking and nature to the beach to culture to, music, and everything is there and it's right there. And so then moving to Vegas just felt very different, not in a, it's different because it's a tourist town that has a lot of people that live there and work in the industry, but then you're also in the desert and it's so hot and it's you're not near water at all, which was really weird for me. And then now I've moved out here and I'm like, oh, well, now I miss that about Vegas. So I think everything for me is tricky because I think finding the magic of what each city has is the key, and like understanding and appreciating that. But it's hard for me not to sometimes compare like what I grew up in, you know?
I totally understand. I always joke with people that I'm like the worst person to ever be a travel critic or anything because everywhere I go, I'm always like, I'm going to find the best about this thing.
Yes,
the best.
I will find it. Yeah.
Like, and which is why I even asked about Vegas, because I had been going, excuse me, I've been going there since like 2012 pretty regularly for nonprofit current initiatives.
Yeah.
Like that's like one of our second homes, one of our hubs for the laundry project and affordable Christmas and stuff we do. So my experience of Vegas from the get-go was very much like the outside communities and like people that,
which there's a lot of awesome people and stuff there. So that
100%.
Yeah. So it's that's why it's such a loaded question.
So which is why I asked, because I'm always like, oh, I love Vegas, and people are like, you're weird, and I'm like,
and you're loving.
Like
and what's funny is you love the real Vegas, which is not the tourist Vegas,
Right.
which is even more unique to be
Yes.
like actually love like the Henderson community.
I do enjoy. I've met so many great people from Henderson.
Yes, that's where I lived. Yeah.
Talking about water, wasn't it like no Lake Mead trips? That doesn't.
No, yeah, I did do. We did a few little Lake Mead trips, but it's not the same. You know, not the same.
Watching the Hoover Dam slowly sink more and more over there. No, but that was something we had. I remember talking about one of the first few times I met you. But it is. I have an affinity for Vegas because of that work and being in the community. Like more so getting to know that side than just like wandering through. Like you've seen one casino, you've seen them all. Like I enjoyed fun touristy. Like I've gone to the fountains and stuff, but. Which leads me into my kind of question about you coming to Charlotte is, for me, Vegas was like somewhere I didn't live but visited a lot and felt like I was wanting to like get more involved in the community there and like get to know people more and made a lot of those connections. So what's it been like for you, Charlotte being that place for you, coming here, not knowing anybody? I mean, I just from like an outsider perspective, like having mutual friends and social media, which you can only gauge so much from that, but it seems like you've made fast work of ingratiating yourself in the community, like creating things that we're going to talk about that are like really cool, bringing people together. Has it felt like that for you? How did all that kind of happen over time?
Well, I think it's so funny because I do think we all, like we kind of talked about this before we were on air too. It's like ultimately like attracts like, right? So it's if you're the kind of person who's interested in this kind of stuff and you're wanting to do it, you're going to naturally end up finding the people that also feel that way. And I've always wanted to approach, because I'm a doer. Like if I have an idea and it's there, like more than, if it stays there, then I have to execute on it in some capacity, because otherwise I'll just, be like, oh, I got to do that thing, or I got to write that thing. And so I think every time I've gone somewhere and done something, I've always wanted to do it in a way that complemented what was already happening in a community, and not like, I'm going to come in and produce my own comedy show. It's like, okay, well, what's happening in Charlotte? What's working in Charlotte? Who's working? Who's doing the thing that I want? And if we don't have it, then I can create a space for it, or I can like facilitate and work with people who are already doing a version of like what I want to be hanging out around, So I think that just by process of like, as I've started producing some of this stuff, I'm reaching out, I'm talking to people, and you naturally end up, oh, you got to meet this person, or you got to talk to this person. And so I think that like lends itself to meeting the like-minded people. And then I think also Carol, my dear friend and co-founder, creator of Group Chat Girlies, which I'm sure we'll mention later, but she will tell the story, I will tell it too, but I basically just forced her to be my friend. I had seen her do stand-up at this show, and I turned to my boyfriend and I said, I'm going to be friends with her. And this was, at the time I had just moved out here. I didn't have any like real friends yet. And I was like, that one, I could be, like, that's my friend, And I sent her a DM. I slid into her DMs, and we met up for coffee, and we started talking. And I was like, yep, I was correct. This is an awesome person. And then as we continued to kind of develop our friendship, I, decided we should also we had a lot of stuff in common and wanted to make similar stuff. And so it kind of, like I said, it's sort of just a pattern of me being like, I'm going to do stuff, and then you find the people that connect to you. Yeah,
which I take the same. I completely empathize on that. I've always taken the same approach. And what is cool is like it's you could have fooled me that you had lived here for like 5 years or a decade or whatever. The way you've been able to produce things and like just become such an integral part of the community and do so much to like empower people or create those spaces for comedy or connection or whatever. But I love that approach you talked about of like honestly valuing what is here, where can I fit in, not just like I'm going to do it regardless.
I'm going to do the thing without because because every community is different. It's like seems impossible to just sort of show up and be like, I'm going to do this thing. Like I have this idea. It's not even my idea. I'm not even taking credit for it. But that kind of like bar lecture series idea of like some cool professor comes and like gives a 30-minute lecture on some like interesting thing, and I'm like, I don't think anyone in Charlotte's really doing that yet. I want to see it, and I'm like keep mentioning it in conversations with people just to make sure I'm not like stepping on anyone's toes with it. And it's like, okay, well, if eventually no one's like, oh, blank's doing it, then I'll just do it because I've like now kind of talked to enough people to go, I'm not like stepping on someone's corner, you know? And so I think there's just a process of that and like understanding, well, what is out there and who's doing it? And can I either support them or, you know, create something that will feed the big ecosystem?
Yeah, because I'm also a doer. The
multi-hyphenate.
Yeah, exactly. But and when you're, like you said, like attracts like, and the more you meet people that you realize there's like levels to it even. Like there's doers that just kind of like plow through anything and anyone, and like it can burn out quickly or it's not like sustainable. And then there's, for lack of a better way to say it, in the spirit of sounding elitist, there's like smart doer.
Sure, yeah. Intentional, intentional, yeah.
Those are better words. Yeah, thoughtful, intentional, but just like you're viewing it, which is how I view it, as like it's a puzzle, and you're looking at it from 30,000 feet. Like, how do these things fit together?
Totally.
How can I be a part of that puzzle rather than the competitive of like, I'm going to take over, or do what, or push
exactly.
This thing out.
And I feel like, because the thing is, I this is like my philosophy with all stuff. Like I've, really, especially with acting, it's like, I want to be a creator. Like my dream is to do what like Issa Rae did and Phoebe Waller-Bridge did and Lena Dunham did and Michaela Cole did, where they kind of created a show that they wrote and they star in, but it becomes a vehicle, the whole show. And that's my dream, right? And everyone's always like, well, blank already did it or blank did this. And it's like, I, Skylar, am the audience for each of those shows, and I would watch 10 more seasons of all of them because I want, so it's like the idea that there's like a scarcity mindset around any of this is just wild, because if we create shows that people like going out to and enjoy, then they're going to want to go see other shows. And so the idea of like, how do we create the audience and create the people that enjoy the things that we do, that's how we create a cool community, not just, oh, I want to do a show because I want to be performing. It's like, well, that might not necessarily be conducive to creating audiences that enjoy watching you perform, And so how do you find kind of like the experience of the whole part of it? And that's like what you're saying with the puzzle pieces, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's being thoughtful, it's being intentional, it's being just motivated and driven, just doing it, putting action to it. Like so many ideas are like, there's so much theory and what if, and maybe I'll try this. But
and you can paralyze yourself with that stuff too.
100%. I do it all the time, but actually just doing it, making it happen in small ways that like kind of lead to big ways. And you see how things can grow over time with doing it that way. But like you said too, just not being, like I was talking to somebody about this today even, that, can feel like in podcasting, there's so many podcasts. And so, even in a bigger city like Charlotte, there's so many podcasts highlighting Charlotte people and whatever. And but realizing it's, everyone does bring their own unique like spin to it. So it's being thoughtful, it's being intentional. What's my story? Where do I fit into this?
Yeah. And who am I talking to?
Putting action, but who's my audience? And like realizing you do have an audience. Like at comedy shows, I feel like this plays out all the time, where you'll see 10 comedians get up, and every single one of them across the whole spectrum of how you can possibly resonate with an audience. Everyone resonates in a different way.
In some way, exactly.
It's their voice. It's their perspective.
And it's like, if every one of those 10 comedians had a 1-hour comedy special, guess what? All the comedy audiences would watch all 10 of them. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, well, I liked this one comedian, so now I don't want to watch any other comedians,
Yeah, I think not having a scarcity mindset, having that abundance mindset with creativity, I love it. I think that's so key.
Yeah, my California is showing with all the intention and scarcity mindset. I'm talking very hippie.
Well, now you're making me want to move to California. I'm like, I might be a California elitist.
Am I a Californian?
Yeah, I might be a Californian. Stuart. No, sorry.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, start quoting SNL.
SNL.
I'm sure that's what every person from California loves, when people start quoting SNL.
Take the 405.
No, I love that. And I want to talk about the actual like shows and things you're producing. But I was going to say, because I think one of the other things you talk about in your comedy and stuff is just loving all the HBO shows. So I was like,
I love
you just
HBO.
want to be on HBO. That's
the dream. If my boyfriend was here, he would laugh because he's like, you are like the shows I write. I'm like, I want to be an HBO. He's like, you're a CW. you are maybe CBS. You're a little more mainstream than the HBO. But I love HBO. I would, if I had to pick one, like the great Julia Louis-Dreyfus said in one of her Emmy acceptance speeches, everyone needs an HBO subscription.
Does your boyfriend do comedy?
No. Although he will tell you that he has inspired many a bit.
Yeah, you have one bit about him being approachably hot.
Yes,
that's okay to share.
It is, yeah.
One of my favorite bits of yours because it's so relatable. Yeah. As somebody that nobody's ever asked me to model, I relate to the.
But I bet your wife doesn't want to leave you alone
right.
on a cold.
Yeah, the approachably. That's such a great. HBO, that CW joke is so good.
I'll tell him; he'll love it. He'll love it.
You're more of a CBS.
He's like, I think you're right because I'll write I have this pilot that I've written that I want to do something with. It's about a reality TV producer who accidentally pitches a true crime competition show, and so it's kind of a dark comedy satire look at true crime and the way that women's bodies are talked about and that they often matter more than women's voices, and it's kind of a social commentary. I think in my very highbrow look, and he's like. Yeah, this is more, like a whatever. It's just a network comedy instead of the HBO prestige thing. But whatever. If anyone wants to make that show.
You're like, I'm going to be airing Sundays at 10 p.m. before Last Week Tonight. And he's like, you're going to be right after Blue Bloods, Tuesdays
literally, that's exactly what. Yeah.
That's incredible. We've gone way too long without talking about the producer side of your work. Talk to me about GC Girlies. You mentioned Carol. Like, I'm going to lay out. Just have at it.
Okay, Group Chat Girlies. Well, to me, Group Chat Girlies has been honestly one of the most exciting ventures. I produced a lot of different things. And the producing, I think, comes out of a lot of what we were talking about. It's like, well, what do I want to see? What do I want to do? And I often ask myself that question, especially with these industries that can be very prescriptive of like what success looks like or what it means to be doing it. And I'm like, sometimes I'm like, well, would I want to be doing that? Like, what would make me happy? And so Group Chat Girlies was sort of born out of these two things. One of them being like, what is my ideal dream comedy situation? I was like, well, it would totally be like drinking wine with like the girlies and like laughing at our jokes, the things that we find funny. So I had always had that in mind. And then secondly, I'll keep this appropriate because I don't know how inappropriate we're allowed to get.
Listen, we can put an e-tag on it. It's fine.
Okay. So I also had this like theory about something that was like trending on social media about like the way, and it had to do with like women and sex, right? And I was like talking to Carol one day and I was like, I just have this theory that that's not actually something women like. I don't know. I just feel like this is like become popular culture, like the porn kind of proliferation into social media that has become something that like people think that they like or that they think it's sort of this performative thing that they're doing so that they're desired by men, whatever. And I just was like, I want to ask a room of women in person, like, I just want to ask these questions and just be like, do you guys think this is true? Like, what do you guys think about this? And kind of finding a way to create a community voice. And that is everything from the weird taboo sex question all the way to like, hey, did you guys try that like beauty product that influencer that we all love is pushing? Like, is that actually legit or is she just getting paid? Like, is it really, has anyone tried it? And so I just fell in love with this concept of like, I think a room of women together giving each other honest opinions, but also being able to just like have a conversation with each other about the things that often we don't get to have, in a fun way, like we talked about earlier, where when you're laughing together, you're kind of creating that sense of community. And the best girls' nights out are the nights when you walk away like feeling like relief because you've talked about this thing, you've gotten some gossip or you've gotten to spill the tea, you've got a new TV show you can't wait to go binge. It's like that feeling, if you're a girly, is like the best. It's like the high of all highs to like leave a good girls' night feeling that way. And so I was like, how do we create that in this like way that brings women together and like actually truly creates not just us performing and doing our stand-up, but creates something that everyone in that room walks away feeling like their voice was heard or that their opinions were valued and it was seen, and it's kind of like equalized in this way of like, it doesn't really it's just the room is all sharing and that kind of concept. Anyway, so that's sort of, we've been doing it now since May, I want to say or April was our first live show. And it's become, what we hope will continue to become just a community for that, where we have live shows. We also have a newsletter that goes out once a week where it's like, what are we chatting about? The idea of like, what are you taking to your group chat? But also a place where we're asking fun questions.
I love that. I love the whole concept and how you guys have structured it, what you described it to be. I think it's so cool too when you can take like a seed of an idea or a project and it can incorporate so many elements into it. Like that was one of the things that I thought was really cool about it in particular is you can do, okay, there's a stand-up, there's a comedy element, but then there's questions, there's community, there's food, drink, there's shit.
It's like more than just like one show. And that we tweak the elements of it to be, okay, this worked, this felt like this worked really well, like can we make that better, or like how do we get more, and like we do the burning questions and all this stuff where it becomes like, how do we really do it? Yeah,
and I saw quick connecting the dots. So Andy Weber, who's coming up on an episode of the Easter Pod, and he's the photographer, the creative mind behind the Good Humans.
Oh, awesome! Yeah,
sorry with that. As this recording, ironic with the timing, Carol was just featured on Good Humans, and I was reading it, and she was talking about the burning questions segment. Is that, if I understand it correctly? So you said, I want to ask these questions, see how other women are feeling. Is that basically where you're just turning it on the audience and letting people ask questions? Is that
so it's it actually starts at when you first show up at the live show. We have like little slips of paper that are available to you kind of throughout the room, and they have prompts on them that say everything from like, should I blank, or a hot take on this, or I don't get the hype about blank, or what should I do? Like there's just little prompts on there. The last thing I spiraled out about was blank, and so people will fill them out, and it's totally anonymous, which is why it's so fun, because you might have a question that you haven't even talked to like your best friend about, but you're like, okay, I can put it in the thing. And because it's totally anonymous, when we draw them and we start talking about them, the room has a visceral reaction often. And sometimes they don't. Like sometimes it's a generic, like, yep, do it, that's great. Or it'll be like, ooh, like this moment happens where everyone sort of like buzzes because they have like opinions about it. And we have had some questions that come up that people are very split on. And then we've had things that people are like vehemently like yes or no or whatever it is. And so I think it's this really cool moment where, and sometimes it's silly and sometimes it's really deep, but every audience ends up having its own vibe because the questions and all of that are coming from the room. It's not just like, oh, random person from, whatever. And so we're still working on how we can continue to like some of these conversations, like, man, we need more of this conversation. I want to see what other, so we're finding ways that we can maybe expand it outside of the live show, but that's also why it kind of feels like girly Fight Club too, where it's like what happens at the live show really does kind of stay at the live show.
It's girly Fight Club.
Girl chat Fight Club.
Yeah. That's what a great way to describe it. But and I, a little behind I was recording the episode with Andy before you and I recorded our conversation, but he and I were even talking about like the way Good Humans, his project, has fostered community, and you're like highlighting and featuring people, but then the way people support each other and like you feel seen and you're not alone.
Totally.
And that's what I love about Group Chat Girlies and what you're doing with that. And one of the elements of it is it's one thing to, again, just there's like layers to this. It's one thing to be a doer, to create, to perform, to have talent, whatever. It's another to kind of flip it outside of yourself, not just how am I being perceived or how am I as a performer or whatever, but like using it as a tool and a vehicle. And I think it's one of the most powerful things you can do in general as a creative or entrepreneur or whatever, is you're taking the gifts you have and the things you enjoy and just like fostering community and connection with it. Do you feel like, I'm sure the answer is yes, but do you feel like you've seen that response with the girls that are attending, like the people that are involved in it, that it's like we feel seen, we feel not alone, like we're connecting, like
yeah. And I mean, of course, like not to be the hero of my own story, because I'm sure there's people who've come to the show and been like, whatever, not for me. But I think overwhelmingly it has felt like, and what I've witnessed and what Carol has witnessed is that people leave either, they'll either come with their friends or they come not knowing anybody, right? But you leave feeling part of something. Like whether that's like, oh my gosh, we all now have this inside joke of that silly thing that happened about barrel pants or whatever. but we like one of my favorite moments. So, I mean, there's been a lot of them, but one of my favorite moments was at a show we had a couple months ago. There was like a table of girls, and we knew that they had all sort of bought individual tickets and didn't know anyone. And at the end, after the show was over, they stayed at that table for like an hour talking to each other. And it was like, for me, it's kind of like these moments where, we've all been to like a mixer, you've met somebody new, and that's all awesome and so great. But there's something about in the room when it's sort of the lights are dim and Carol and I are kind of like leading it, so you don't feel like there's this onus on you to have to contribute or talk, but you might say something. And what happens is if we do like a section where we talk about like, what are we watching? What are we, is this restaurant worth eating at or whatever? And someone might inevitably be like, oh, yeah. Like they'll nod their head. And then you go, oh, I feel that way about that thing. Now I have something I can go talk to them about. But it wasn't this like forced icebreaker thing. It's like, oh, that girl was so passionate about that book. And I totally felt the same way. Like I'm going to go talk to her or whatever.
Yeah, I think the organic part of that building community is so important because when you like try to force it to happen, I mean, like you shared about Carol, sometimes you can force someone to be your friend.
It can work. Yeah.
You can just like, I'm going to make this happen. I found myself moving to Charlotte having to do that a lot at first.
Yeah,
like, I knew we should be friends. I'm going to make it happen. Figure it out.
And it's hard, when some people already have established friend groups and whatever, it can be hard to like break in. And like Carol and I have talked about, we haven't done this yet, but having like, we call it like cards on the table, like where maybe we have like, you have a green card, which is like, come talk to us. Like we're, or like a red card, which is like, I don't get to go out with my friends very often. This is our girls' night. Like, we're going to hang out and mostly talk to ourselves. Like just a way to sort of signal like where people are at without having to have that like, we haven't done that yet, but it's an idea that we've like tossed around of that it feels organic and honest, but it is also that people get what they need out of the event.
100%, because people want to connect with each other and find those commonalities and make friends or whatever. But if it feels like forced or awkward or whatever, that can be very off-putting. So, I mean, obviously, I haven't attended and probably never will, but just seeing it from the outside and the way you're describing it, I can, and knowing, like having met Carol a couple times through stand-up and having this conversation with you, I can get the sense that it probably very much is a great vibe in that space of like achieving the goals that you have for it to feel like a open, organic, but like it's facilitated enough that people actually like,
right. There's a structure that's there that even if you didn't say anything, write anything, you're still going to walk away having been a part of it and felt like you're contributing and experiencing, but also you could be contributing and making, it can be kind of whatever you want the experience to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. Which parlays nicely into Laugh Until You Cry. That's another show. Talk about that show that you produced.
Oh boy, yeah. Laugh Until You Cry is another, it's a stand-up comedy show that I produced and is ultimately was born out of an experience that I had with my family, and I'll talk about it. But it is a stand-up comedy show and a talk back with a mental health professional to just talk about the ways we talk about mental health. So the goal with Laugh Until You Cry is to ultimately, like, it sounds very cliche, but it's like destigmatize the rhetoric around mental health. And I did a TEDx talk about this kind of, again, this idea that I had and this philosophy that all really was born out of just doing it. The quick backstory is that I had spent the holidays home with my family back in 2021, and that January of 2022, I went on stage and I told a joke about, I said, having a relationship with a sibling as an adult is a lot like being in a relationship you wish you would have ended years before. My sister and I, we have too many inside jokes to call it quits, but we see the world completely differently. She thinks I spend too much money, and I think she's mentally unstable. And about 3 weeks after I told that joke on stage, I had gotten a phone call that she had been hospitalized with a mental breakdown. And in the moment, I think I knew, wow, you had used comedy as a way to process what you were experiencing. And that's interesting because every time I tell that joke, people kind of laugh or they respond. It's like, oh, you also have an access point to this. And then the more I started talking about it, people were like, oh, me too. I have a loved one, et cetera, et cetera. I was like, well, why is no one talking about it then? Why do we not have a place to just normalize some of these conversations? And then literally 2 months ago, I also started working with an organization called 1 Degree of Separation that specifically does stand up for suicide prevention and depression awareness. And so I was doing a talk back with them, and it hit me I had gone on stage and talked about this thing with my sister before I'd ever even asked her if she was okay. And I had never opened up the door to even have a conversation with her to be like, hey, are you good? Like something feels off. And yet I knew it was off enough to go make a joke about it before the thing even happened. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this is wild. And so that sort of started this whole exploration for me of like, how can we use stand-up comedy as a way to open the door for conversation? And my TEDx talk talks a lot about like, I think it can be a tool because basically like I say to my TED, I'm like, don't worry about watching it. I'll tell you everything right here. No, I say in there like for reference, I think every year. So first of all, I asked the audience, like, how many of you, if you had a loved one who was in a car accident or needed assistance, you would know to call 911? And most people like nod their heads, right? How many of you would know that if someone wanted to be unalive, if they were no longer wanting to be with us, to call 988? It's like the number of people who know to do that is very, very low. And I'm like, well, first of all, that's a problem. And so I started doing research for my TEDx talk, and I realized that every year there are 3.9 million emergency room visits. So this is people going to the ER for injuries related to car accidents. And every year, 3.3 million emergency room visits are for individuals with psychiatric needs. So you are almost statistically as likely to have someone in your life need to go for a car accident as for a psychiatric need. And yet that disparity is so big. And so I just thought, well, okay, how can I do something that I know can at the very least, just talk about it? And stand-up comedy is that, because fundamentally, like we talked about earlier, when a room of people laughs at something, you've now created not just community in a moment where we go, oh my gosh, me too, but now comedians have done the heavy lifting, and somebody can say, hey, do you remember when that comedian was joking about that thing? I think I felt that way too. And now it's not just you having to take the vulnerability and be like, hey, I'm feeling this or whatever, but you can use stand-up as a way to talk about some stuff, because as we both know, right, like a lot of comedy is dealing with mental health in some capacity. And so anyway, so that fundamentally was how Laugh Until You Cry was born, and that is what the show is it stand-up and then a talk back, just pointing out some of this stuff, normalizing the way we talk about it, changing hopefully the dialogue, little things like, when someone says like, I have a broken leg, they're not saying I'm a broken leg, but they say like, I'm depressed or I'm whatever. But it's like, if I have depression, that now becomes something that you can talk about and treat, right? Versus like a broken leg is something that you can treat. And often when someone has a physical ailment, we lean in to help. And when it's mental, we lean out. And so I just want to raise a talk about this stuff. So that's what Laugh Until You Cry is. That was a long-winded, I'm sorry.
Not at all. I could listen to you talk about that forever, because I'm very passionate about those subjects. Like I think talk about resonating with people. I think a lot of people would resonate with, like, I've certainly had my own mental health struggles that are far and wide and complicated and vast, and having loved ones, as you described, that go through those types of things. So having a vehicle to process that, to do everything you described about like kind of the mission of that show, and you and I have both heard the kind of like, for lack of a better word, it can be like a little, the cliche, like, oh, comedy is therapy. That whole kind of sentiment, which it's a very easy like easy connection to make. But, you talk about layers of things. What you've done with this show, and I haven't had the opportunity to attend one yet, but it's like diving down deeper into like, no, but actually you are breaking walls down with comedy, like you said. And actually therapy and mental health and all this is important. And so connecting the two in such a practical way through something like Laugh Until You Cry, to me, it's like I can think of few better ways to use like the gift of stand-up comedy to break down those walls and make those connections with people and emphasize the importance of mental health and therapy and all these things.
And to be able to just talk, and to me, it was so important to be able to talk about it when it wasn't already too late and it wasn't already heavy per se, because it is already heavy enough. But sometimes, we want to be able to just be like, it's okay. Sometimes people laugh, the broken leg, that's funny. Haha, you fell down whatever. It's like, okay, well, we can still talk about mental health in a way that makes it not feel, ultimately the key word is like shame, right? When the person who feels any kind of shame admitting or experiencing any part of that, then like we have a problem. And so that's the thing that I'm trying to change. It's like that person should never feel shame for bringing this up or needing to ask for help. And so how can a conversation kind of facilitate that and make it feel like, oh yeah, right? Remember all these comedians are dealing with it. I can talk about it too, or whatever.
Yeah, and I think creating like, safe and like non-threatening avenues to do those things like does open it up a lot more. Because if we're being honest, and that's the paradox of humanity is like we all have kind of the same basic needs of feeling loved and seen and like taking care of our mental health and physical health and connecting in community and all these things. But at the same time, we're all our own worst enemies with that, where we can knowingly or unknowingly like shun people, or we can build up walls.
Right.
And it's this whole complicated thing. So anything you can do to like tear down those walls and make it feel safe for people to like, oh yes, I resonate with this, I struggle with this, this is
exactly
a space I can connect with, this is so huge. And on a personal level, for me, I don't know if we've talked about this, but I, with Megan and my wife's company, Easterday Creative, I do digital marketing actually for mental health therapists. So I've had a roster the last 7 years of clients like all across the country that have their own practices. And it's very straightforward of like, I'm using Google and Google Ads and tools to like try to get clients in the door and do some of the marketing and advertising. But like in addition to being in therapy myself for as long as I can remember and needing so much personal help, getting to be on the side where you're connecting people to that help, even if it's through like a digital marketing type avenue, but then just getting to, the caveat for me, like I'm not a therapist.
Right.
Same.
Same.
Which you bring therapists to the show.
Correct. Yes.
Which is incredible. But just getting to be in that world, learn more about treatments and issues and the whole destigmatization of it, where you can talk about it in like a normal conversation. That's been like a widely cultural thing, like shift that's happened in the last decade or so.
Yeah.
And I think it's phenomenal because, you want to like balance, where I think the other thing that's happened is like you can sometimes go overboard with the therapy, like speak and all these things.
Certainly, there's definitely rhetoric and things that can become very problematic in their own right.
But at the end of the day, I'm for anything that's like, we just want to help people and connect.
It's just a toolbox. Yeah.
When I was growing up, I did not feel like outside of like very few avenues that I had any chance to like process those things. Or I didn't even know if I used words like anxiety or depression till like much later in life.
Right.
So.
Well, and I think that that's the big misconception, not to turn this into a whole mental health podcast, but I think that's the big...
It wouldn't be the first time.
The big misconception around like just even the concept of therapy or the pushback to it is that ultimately therapy can be many different things. But often it's just a toolbox for you to be able to examine and look at things within your own life. And I always say, like, when I resisted going to therapy because I was like, oh, going to therapy, that means something's really messed up, or I don't need that, I'm not that bad or whatever. And my roommate kept talking to me about it. And eventually it was like, okay, if you need to get your hair cut, like, would you go to a hairdresser? And it's like, yeah, it's like, because someone else is better at doing that than you are. Or it's like, if you go to the gym and you hire a personal trainer to help teach you the best ways to like get through a set, like no one thinks there's a problem with that, right? And so this is the exact same thing. It's like a way to, with a professional, develop a set of skills that can hopefully help you when you need it for whatever it is that you need.
And again, I think it's so cool that you're building and producing shows that, yes, the focus can be comedy and stuff. We both know like there's a lot of people that were producing comedy shows, like that's the main focus. Being able to build these other elements into it of connection and community and important topics like therapy, I think that's a super cool skill to like. It's just such a great access point for people. What has been the response from like your Tedx talk or Laugh Until You Cry that you've noticed or stood out to you?
Yeah, I think it's it's so funny because I think ultimately, not to get super meta about it, but I think it's like those things for me. Like I try to, with all things, including acting, it's like I try to often like leave it after, like I feel like I have a part in the thing and then it's no longer mine. It's like it's about like the legacy or whatever happens, unless something like really bad happens. But ultimately I think, people obviously come up and they talk to you and they tell you how they appreciated it or whatever. But the only thing that mattered to me was that this opened the door for my sister and I to have a conversation. And because I had to tell her, eventually I'm like, by the way, I started producing this show because, after everything happened, we had our relationship, went through some stuff. And I finally was like explaining to her like the inspiration, which was the situation and the joke and all this stuff. And she came to my TED Talk, and that was the first time she'd heard me like say some of this stuff out loud, let alone to a room of people. God, she's so brave, And I asked her, like, is it okay if I'm doing this? And she's really been so generous and like, yeah, if this experience helps a single other person, then like there was a reason I went through it. And for me, that's the thing that I stick with is like it ended up creating a conversation for my sister and I and a path to her opening up about things and me learning about her experience because we had this other tool to start the conversation. And so that's, what I've really taken out of it. And then in a way, anything else that happens, like I hope is good. I hope is positive, but that's not really my journey. It's everyone else's,
Yeah, and I think that's one of the cool things that can happen when you go through the process like what you described is it can take something like when you kind of take your creativity, things you're passionate about, subjects you care about, and you're willing to just like open it up into the communal space and like work through it, whether it's like going to therapy or doing it in like more of this kind of show setting, there's like there can be like a redemptive aspect to our stories that you see a lot of the time where it's very real. Like, your relationship with your sister is like hugely like raw and real and important. And, it's like more important than any like, show, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So to be able to ultimately have, and, life's not linear. Things go up and down. There's
totally.
Everything can be a roller coaster, especially in relationships. But that's something that for my life, like if we don't have time to get into it, but if I got into more of my details of my story, like for myself, sometimes I sit back and I'm like, it's a miracle I'm even sitting here and able to do stuff like this.
Yeah.
And I think there's very much that connection of when you've been through hard stuff, when you process through it, whatever, I think it can either, take you down and like keep you down and you just like stay in that mindset of scarcity and failure and that happens to plenty of us all the time. But to me, it's such a miracle when those same things that were so hard or traumatic or whatever can be flipped into like now it's being used for good.
Right.
I think that's an important connection,
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's probably why, we end up loving comedy so much is because like the best version is that you take those lows all the way to something that now brings other people, some kind of, not just the community building, but, to laugh is, that goes back to what you were saying about like people being like, laughter is the best medicine, but it really is. Cause I think oftentimes people will tell you laughing in those moments when it really feels really bleak is sometimes one of the things that saves people is just being able to like have that moment of humanity or to be taken outside of your experience. And so what better way to use your own stuff to then get back to that part of the process?
Yeah. And I guess for myself, and I'm sure you have I know plenty of people that haven't quote unquote made it out of whatever the struggle is. And for me, it's like, there's so many sliding doors moments that happen in life. And I'm, it sounds like you'd probably share this mindset, but just not taking a single thing for granted that you get to do. And I think when you have that mindset, it makes you so much more present with the people in your life and the things you're creating and involved in. And it makes you not take things for granted. And it just like really opens up your eyes to how things can be used as a vehicle to make the world a better place. It feels cliche to say, or maybe trite with all that's going on in the world, but I really do believe it's like that kind of one step at a time.
Totally.
Like you got to where you're at today through taking each step along the way in the process.
Yeah.
And I feel like healing can kind of happen. Like some of the language I'll even use for like therapist clients is like take the first step on the path to healing. Because it's a journey. It's a step by step.
And it's not, like you said earlier, it's not linear. No. And also I say all of this with the caveat of like, I hope and do this all with the best intentions. But, I'm sure there's people who've come to those shows and been like, oh, this was traumatic for me to hear this stuff. So it's like everyone's experiences of stuff is different. And it's hard to, you approach it all with the best intention, but you can only do what you can do.
When it comes to, we haven't talked about your acting a ton in that part, which is ironic because that has been like your main thing.
That was the catalyst, yeah.
That was the catalyst. But all this stuff we're talking about that can be very like deep and emotional, like what is your, I guess I'll try and make it as broad as possible because I know it's different for everyone, but had a few actors on the show. What's been your experience with acting in that journey? And what is your process like, tapping into some of these things, like, whether it's the comedy or the tragedy, all the different aspects of humanity, like how do you dive into those things and how do they inform your performance and just what's it been like going on that journey?
Well, I think, for me, the thing that I love the most about acting is that I'm ultimately always sort of a tool or a part of someone else, like a bigger story, even if it's something I wrote or if it's something somebody else wrote. But there's a team of people kind of that come together to tell this story, whether that's in theater or whether it's on film and camera. And, there's a lot of people involved in it. And I think with acting, I feel like, to be honest, like I've never thought like, oh, I want to be the center of attention. I want to be, acting has never been about like fame for me. It's been about like the idea of being an integral part of something that affected people. And so comedy does that, right? In these like micro moments we've talked about where you have these moments in the room and you've, people laugh and you're experiencing it and you're having that feedback loop with the audience. With acting, you get, it's like the biggest privilege in the world, right? It's like you get to tell someone else's story literally. Like you are, like it's not me, Skylar, it's not my story. It is a character. And I love this moment that even if it is a comedy, but I always tell myself like right before, action or right before I step on stage, it's like, this is someone else's story. Like you get to go do that. And it's your job to do it well. It's your job to like understand everything about this and your part in the story. And sometimes you're playing the villain and sometimes you're playing, whatever. But that is, acting can be, you are reflecting back other people's experience in the most true sense of it, because it is not you. It's a character that you're playing and it's a story. And if you're lucky, the story does something. We all talk, we live in movie quotes. We talk about our shows. Like it is such a part of our culture and a part of our life that like being a part of those storytelling things can be, I think, not to go so far down this line, but I've always felt myself like when I was younger, I was like, do I want to be in politics? And then I took the, my first poli-sci class in college and I was like, nope, that's a problem. I was like, I know, I'll be a journalist and I'll write about it. And it's like, you start learning about how journalism works. And I was like, nope. And ultimately, like, I never wanted to be a part of something that like felt like I had to give my opinion and I had to take a stand about something, because I think human beings are so much more nuanced. And I think that's why the world is so scary right now, is because it doesn't feel like we're giving each other the room to be nuanced. And to me, it just felt like, oh, acting is sort of this place where the nuance can live. And when you sit and you watch a TV show or you watch a movie, it is sort of one of the only things we have left of like watching other people's experience and maybe resonating with it. And so that's the through line with everything I do. So Group Chat Girlies, it's not about me, right? It's about the room of people and the voices in the room. And Laugh Until You Cry, it's not about me. It's about the conversations and the things. And so for me, it's always been, acting has been that way too. It's like, how can I participate in creating something that now hopefully either brings people closer to their own experience and their own thing, or gives some sort of empathy building for X, Y, or Z,
Empathy, yeah, that was a word I wanted to mention earlier. That is so key. That you are I agree with your like perception, because I think about that for myself too. Like, okay, podcasting, Easterday creative, nonprofit work, stand-up comedy, whatever. Fantasy football doesn't fit into that equation. We'll leave that over here.
Hey, you never know.
That's neither here nor there. I was going to say, I do have lots of leagues with people, and I like to connect with people.
There you go. And you probably often draft with a little bit of empathy. You're like, man, this guy's got a chip on his shoulder. Yeah. Like, I'm ready for,
He's going to have a great season. He's been through it. But I think that's the key word. And I love that you look at all the things you're involved in, because I very much try to look at it the same way for myself of what are these through lines? Like we were talking before we got, we had a whole other podcast conversation before the podcast. But just the like, when you have so many projects and things you're involved in, because that's how you're wired and how you're driven, that feeling of, am I not somehow not doing enough, or should I be focusing more on like
on
one
X,
thing?
Y, or Z, yeah.
All those kind of things that go through your head. But for me, I take solace in, again, not a therapist, but, talked about, you don't want to overuse therapy speak, but one of the things I've learned that was very helpful for me in therapy is like just the idea of what are your core values as a person.
Totally.
And
yes.
it sounds like you very much, and again, caveat, we're all work in progress. You have those figured out for yourself. Here are my core values. Here's the through line between all the projects and how they like play out in that. And then I think it shows in like the outcome of those projects. Because if you were just like, oh, I'm going to over here and do that, and there was no like core values or connection with it, I think it would play out differently. So I think empathy is huge. And you talk about nuance. I mean, I think we don't have to talk about ages, but I think we're like similar in age enough that like it's that weird generation of not growing up being always online, but like also growing up being online.
Totally.
That like
the
weird in
millennial,
between.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, for me, I stubbornly will always do this podcast and like put my energy here or comedy or places where I feel like I can actually connect with people and have that nuance in my life.
Yes.
And
it's so necessary.
The internet does not feel like one of those places.
No.
So I rebuff against that a lot. So it's refreshing to hear someone else kind of have the same perception of like the issues in our world are so unbelievably important to engage with. But for me, I'm like, I want to help meet a tangible need for local families of like laundry, do those kind of things, or have a conversation with somebody. It's anything that can inspire that empathy and compassion and connection
and understanding. Like there's a difference between saying like, oh, I'm just not going to engage with it or whatever, and actually really trying to be a part of the world and wanting to understand and see and meet the people and listen to their stories about how things have affected them versus just, oh, I'm going to post my opinion online, whatever.
Because it can be like a one-way, like I'm consuming it online versus exactly what you said. Like and this is the like paradox I feel like I always live in. Like I feel very much engaged with everything all the time.
Right.
But it's just like you're picking, this is the vehicle that I think is going to be the best use of my energy.
Exactly.
To engage with it. Because when you get, not to get too deep into it, but like you get online, it's like, it doesn't matter what you say. People
are
agree with
either
you.
Gonna
People
love it or hate
it.
Right.
And it's just, I see the same cycle play out with every topic, every subject, and then you have the comments to the comments and the thing to the,
Right. And so much of it,
feels unproductive.
Exactly. And you lose the string of like how to develop your own critical opinion about it in a way because you're not engaging and listening, that's a whole other discourse.
It is a whole other thing. But the point, and, to be clear, like I think people should have the right, they share whatever you want, like say whatever you want,
Yeah, I mean, and exactly.
Everybody expresses it differently.
But I do want to go back to what you said about core values because it's fun. This is what's fun about these conversations, right? Is because I did, before I even really was doing any of this stuff, I actually did for myself say like, well, what are my core values? And I decided on 4 words, like specifically, and I looked up the definition of them, right? And I'm like, these are the words. Like, so when I do stuff, like it has to pass that test of like, is it hitting one of these things or am I doing it from a selfish place or is it going back to these like core values? And they can change. Like you said, we're work in progress, things change, but there is something really powerful about doing that for yourself and then deciding if the thing you're doing actually fits into that or not. And then it's okay to let it go if it doesn't.
Are you comfortable sharing the 4 words? Is that a prize?
Sure, yeah. Well, authenticity is number 1. So if you meet me and you get to know me, you'll know like I have a very low tolerance for superficiality. I'm sure my face sometimes will be like, interesting. So
it's fun to have a face that betrays your emotions.
It sure does. Yeah, my friend Jen, she's an actress, and we did a show together, and she told me one time, she goes, "Oh, Skylar can't lie," because my face I can't. So authenticity and just being able to bring a sense of your, real self to things. Integrity, I think, for me, that's like so big because it's easy to, whatever. I don't need to go into integrity. Authenticity, integrity, generosity. Like I want things to be in a spirit of generosity and humility. I don't want them to be about me. And so those are my 4 core values, and I try to stick by them.
Are you comfortable with other people, perhaps myself, just stealing those word for word?
Please, yes. Hey, I think they're good. I like, and it's to be clear, like I say that stuff it's not like I just like, oh, and now I have integrity. Like I had to really, with integrity, I was like, what does this mean? And it's like an active practice of standing by what I say and doing the things that I mean. And even like stuff, perfect example, like before I was in a, we've been in a relationship for a while now, but like I used to like post selfies or whatever because you're like, I like the attention that I get from people clicking on this and liking this. And like the other day, it's like, well, am I doing that for the attention? Or it's like, well, a woman of integrity doesn't like need other people to like this photo of herself. So I'm not going to post it. And it's like, I had to actually stop and talk to myself about it. So it's not like I just like walk through life. I'm like, well, I'm in, it's being in constant conversation with your core values, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I love that you have those, because I think if that's something that's one of those universal things I would argue that if we all took the time to like sit down and think through it, we would all like affect each other better and just have more of an understanding of how we affect the world around us.
Totally.
And other people.
And how you engage with it. Yeah.
And how you engage with it. Because then what happens is you get to kind of filter everything through those. Like, I couldn't tell you my 4 or 5 words, but I very much align with like the 4 you listed for my own core values. And I guess I would, if you like made me do it, I would put things in there like community, connection, stuff like that. It helps you kind of filter what you put your time and energy into, how you respond to things, like, and going, the social media thing. For me, it's like sometimes social media can very much be a vehicle for this, but it's like, what is the thing that's going to help you connect to people? Empathy is another one, like those types of things. But I think that's key to like think about, because kind of the full circle, the multi-hyphenate. I can feel, as I'm sure you relate, I can feel very overwhelmed by my own life. Yeah. A lot of the time. Like, totally. Am I a crazy person?
Yeah. Why am I saying yes to this thing? Or why am I? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what am I even doing? But when you have those core values and you begin to filter things through it, I think we could talk about this all day, but I think the main takeaway is like, it's not so unalike and disparate as it seems. It's like there's way more similarities, way more through lines through all the things you're involved in, way more of a cohesive vision statement, life statement, mission statement, whatever, than it may even appear on the outside.
And that I'm sure it appears on that website. It's like, oh, she's doing a lot of writing.
It was funny while you're talking about humility, and I had you said it's not about me, and I have your section pulled up.
Like SkylarSchock.com.
It says about me at the top.
I mean, you still got to have it on there, but it's not. Yeah, it's not something I have spent too much time thinking about.
No, it's fine. I need a website. I'm not gonna lie. But man, okay, I'm overwhelmed by this conversation in the best way, because I feel like we've gotten to dive into so many like cool topics. It's gone so far beyond like really what I pitched to you, and what I hope for is, yes, these are, and we could obviously list many more things you're involved in, more projects or whatever, but going so beyond that and really getting to the why and why you do these things.
Yeah. That's such a treat, Corey. You're so great at both participating in and encouraging these conversations. So it's really, I appreciate it.
To quote Andy Samberg quoting Nick Cage, that's high praise. No, I do appreciate it. And
double SNL night.
Californians in. Yeah. Oh, such millennials. But at the risk of doing, the irony of the negative self-talk, I do appreciate that, because I'm an extroverted processor. You're asking me earlier, like, are you an extrovert or introvert? Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm probably, I'm not like Paul Snyder levels of introvert comedy, but I'm also not like pure as the driven snow extrovert. Sure.
Yeah.
But I definitely am an extroverted processor. So I'm always grateful when somebody can make some meaning out of the words I'm just like figuring out in real time.
I love that. That's awesome.
But yeah, so I take a lot of encouragement from everything you've shared. And this has really fit the mission of the show. Of like, this is a conversation like for anyone listening, and for myself, I can listen back to, and like, there's so many good takeaways. So I appreciate your willingness to like go there, as it were, and talk about those things.
Well, and I hope, if anything, people just sort of align with like, what is the thing that matters to you, and like make that happen in the way that most aligns with who you are, and that's doable. Like, I think, like you had said earlier, it's like a lot of times people get kind of caught up in the either like, I'm going to do this thing, but they're not doing it for the right reasons, or that they just can't get over the hump of something. And it's like, well, if you're going after something for the right reasons and it aligns with who you are, like, then you'll never regret doing it,
Couldn't have said it better myself. As we kind of wrap up, so you just gave some there, but like, is there any other, encouragement or advice you'd give generally?
Ooh, I think the biggest, first of all, I'm like, I'll take all the advice. I love listening to advice and being inspired by things. I think the one thing that I like often find myself in conversations with friends and family about is just like, it's the cliche. It's like you get one life, and I was at a memorial recently for a family member, and one of the things that they said in there, it's like, you can't add more days to your life, but you can add more life to your days. And I was so inspired by Quincy Jones' documentary because he's so prolific as a musician, producer, et cetera. He was an incredible talent. And he just, in the documentary, he was like, I just want to wear out my days, you know? And so I just feel like whatever that means to you, like what does it look like to wear them out in a way that feels satisfying to you? Like just, you got to do it. You got to do it.
Well said. I feel like kind of a weirdo, but I've always been very acutely aware of my own mortality.
Yeah.
And I feel like it honestly, to your point where you're sharing, like it really does drive a lot of, like some of the most driven, motivated people I know that accomplish the most. It's like, you're just aware of that. Like you only have so much time.
There's
and you're
only
trying
so much.
to get the most out of life.
And it's hard. It's so hard because, there's a lot of things that are scary and there's a lot of reasons to like not do the thing or go. And I get it. It's like, I don't want to sound like one of those like super out of touch people who's like, just go take the trip. It's like, you can't afford it, but like, that doesn't mean that you can't within each day, like actively find the things that align with who you are and what you want to do. And then make space for the things that that are important to you.
Yeah. So I'm pausing. So I'm like letting that hit. I'm like, oh yeah, that's 100% it. And it really is, it's those small steps, like the overwhelm of life and all the projects. Like we've talked about this too, of I can only focus on this thing right now. Mm-hmm. And that, you kind of take it a step at a time. But I think of anything that I've been able to accomplish or connect with someone or any of that stuff. And it really does just start with those like kind of small incremental things.
Totally. And the last thing, the other quote that I like live by is like the man in the arena quote, right? Like it's not the critic who counts. And I just so can't stress enough, like, especially if you want to do anything where you're putting yourself out there, like stand-up comedy or acting or any creative or non-creative, anything that forces you to like put yourself out in a way that other people can comment on it. Just remember that like you only need to take advice and feedback from the people who have been there, done it, and have the career or thing that you want. If nobody else if they can't be brave enough to have taken the steps that you took, their opinion does not matter. And it's just like so hard sometimes to like give yourself that permission, but it is so true.
As a lifelong people pleaser,
yeah.
Are you a people pleaser?
Yeah, well, you all it's
like
of course, yeah.
Some more than others. I would categorize myself as very
sure, and or just like saying like you want to have done a good job. Like
yes.
you want. It's like I know so many people. I meet so many people who are like, it has to be perfect the first time I do it, and it's like. Well, everybody, I always have to say, it's like, well, the people who have the most success in the world have failed as well, multiple times. And that's just the truth. It's like, you do not become successful without failure.
It is. I am a perfectionist too. So it is learning to overcome those things. But that's been one of my biggest lessons, like at this stage of my life, is realizing just trying to be so much more discerning about who you are surrounding yourself with and taking that advice and feedback from and stuff. Because how it really, you joke about people pleasing and all that, but it really can inform like your self-image and your motivation and what you think your ceiling is or what you're willing to go out and try and fail at. Yeah.
And how you think you'll be received when you do it. Like, are your friends and family going to be like giving you encouragement or are they going to be like doubting it? And like, that's all, The Artist's Way is such a great book for this kind of stuff too.
Yeah. And was it Man in the Arena? Is that a Tom Brady quote? Maybe I've just heard him quote that.
It's a former president.
Oh, you're right.
I can't believe. Yeah.
No, it's fine. We don't need to attribute it.
I was like, please cut that part where I'm like, it's like my joke about Hamilton.
Jimmy Carter. No, I probably heard, back to the football thing, heard people talk about it, but like in that context, but it's important. Yeah, and life is full of failures and missteps and trying and failing, but there is just something to like going and just who you surround yourself with. And you talked about like I met a comedian recently who like lives in Los Angeles, and I asked them what it was like, and they described it as surrounding yourself with people that are so much better than you and how it like lifts you up. And that's been a big realization for me too, is it's easy with our own insecurities and stuff to want to be competitive with other people. Mm-hmm. But the more you can set that aside and say, what can I actually learn from somebody?
Yeah, iron sharpens iron. Yeah.
100%. And like you become a much better at whatever you care about for saying like, who should I be learning from? Exactly.
Who elevates the stuff and who's like upping my bar for how I think this should be done.
Yeah. Okay. We can honestly chat for another hour.
I know, this is so great.
Probably wrap it up. I really appreciate you taking your time. Where can people follow we need to set aside 10 minutes. Where can they follow all the things?
Well, the simplest one is usually my Instagram is Schocking, SSCHOCKING. And that usually I'll post about things on there. My website is SkylarSchock.com, and Group Chat Girlies, I think I have in my bio on Instagram. So all of it, it all feeds back to that hub usually.
Yeah, please go follow Skylar and all her incredible work. I was going to ask you like what some of your goals are, but if you're anything like me, you're like, I can't think past like the next 10 minutes.
Right, my goals are, what's for dinner?
Yeah, exactly.
What do I want to eat today?
But if you tune into Sky, I mean, clearly you're a person that's going to keep climbing the proverbial mountain, if you will. So
hopefully with all of us doing it. Yeah,
exactly. And we're all doing it together. And that's what these things are for. So please go follow Skylar. And I can't thank you enough for, not only coming on the show, but like I said, opening up, being willing to like connect, share your story, talk about a lot of the like in-depth things. I feel like I've done an okay job as a host because thank you. I'm fishing for affirmation. So that's
is that your love language? Words of affirmation?
1,000,000%. Yeah. So for better or worse, but it's because I'm trying to do my host job and ask questions and stuff, but I'm also like, my brain is processing, like all the neurons are firing of like all the realizations and takeaways and like how to like be as a creative and like be a person in the world. I think you've shared a lot of incredibly valuable and awesome insight that I look forward to like listening back on. And I think anyone that listens to this is going to have a lot of incredible takeaways. So thank you for sharing, and just thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you. Chase what inspires you. That's the quickest way to say it all. Chase what inspires you.